Apple, the most valuable company in the world. $3 trillion and 1.3 billion iPhone users. Every year, they release the most powerful iPhone yet, and every year, people flock to stores to buy it, even though it's only marginally better. The question is, how did Apple brainwash an entire generation to be so loyal? It's not for the reason you think. And once you understand the psychology behind Apple, you'll never view the company the same way. This is a story of how Apple brainwashed an entire generation to change the way you think. Forever.
The most efficient animal on the planet is a condor. The most inefficient animals on the planet are humans. The bicycle becomes the most efficient animal. And the right computer, a friendly, easy computer that isn't an eyesore but rather sits on your desk with the beauty of a tensor lamp. The right computer will be a bicycle for the mind. Instead of it being in the right hands, it was in everyone's hands. Everyone in the world.
We'd be talking about the most tectonic shift in the status quo since
ever.
One of my favorite movies of all time is a biopic based on Steve Jobs that was made in 2015, which funny enough is actually based on this book right here by Walter Isaacson. The movie wasn't perfectly accurate, but it gives you a really good representation of who Steve Jobs actually was. His motivations, his emotion, his vision, the things that drove him to make decisions.
You can't write code. You're not an engineer. You're not a designer. You can't put a hammer to a nail. I built the circuit board. The graphical interface was stolen from Xerox PARC. Jeff Raskin was the leader of the Mac team before you threw him off his own project. Everything, someone else designed the box. So how come 10 times in a day, I read Steve Jobs as a genius? What do you do?
I play the orchestra. And you're a good musician. You sit right there. You're the best in your row.
And I think this is a really important point to make because we tend to forget that companies are made by people. Sure, eventually every successful business kind of just inevitably turns into this mega corporation, but that's usually because the people who built them, the heart and soul of the company, have moved on. And I don't think anyone has had a bigger impact on the technology world than Steve Jobs. The Mac, the iPod, the iPhone, the iPad, the subscribe button for this video, just kidding. Even the App Store, iCloud, the whole streaming industry. People tend to forget that Steve Jobs is responsible for iTunes. I mean, if you just look at the tech ecosystem, Apple's mark is everywhere. Whether it's shaping what products companies decide to build or what products consumers decide to buy. Steve Jobs once said, "Some people say, give the customers what they want, but that's not my approach. Our job is to figure out what they're going to want before they do." I think Henry Ford once said, "If I'd asked customers what they wanted, they would have told me a faster horse." People don't know what they want until you show it to them. One of the biggest shames is that we don't get live keynotes from Apple anymore. But then again, there's not another Steve Jobs. It's more important for them to control the narrative these days. If your brand is tied to a single person, that's called key person risk. When you look at Apple today, you see a premium brand, something more than a tech company. A suite of products for people who are truly a step above. Creators, innovators, the ones who think different. Privacy-centric company that cares about your personal data. Products that are stylish and built to last. Products that never fail. A company that values simplicity and performance over options. Everything is about the customer. Value, simplicity, innovation. Maybe less so on the innovation side now that Steve Jobs is gone. The point is, Apple underwent a major rebrand back in 1987 when they ran their iconic Think Different ad. And while they don't really use this phrase anymore, they still subtly imply that Apple customers are different, that they don't fit the mold, square pegs in a round hole. What ends up happening is you indirectly begin associating traits with the product, with the brand, thinking that you'll embody those same traits if you buy an iPhone, a Mac, AirPods, an Apple Watch. And it all ties back to this underlying psychology that they've been driving home for years. If you want to be successful, if you want to be like these people, you have to buy Apple products. If you want to achieve this thing, you need an iPhone. You know, things you can't articulate, but things you know deep down. The same reason when you think of sports, you think of Nike and Adidas. The same reason when you think of Coke, Pepsi comes to mind. And they've been driving this point home for decades. And every year when they have their annual keynote and they launch their new products, they focus on the same thing, showing what you can do with an Apple product. not the actual product specs. You'll never hear Apple mention a competitor by name. They always compare against the previous Apple product. And the idea they're trying to get across is that Apple's in a league of their own, that they don't even have Apple competitors because no one even makes Apple products. And everything the company does is designed with intentionality from start to end. And one of the things they don't get enough credit for is their packaging. They basically pioneered luxury packaging. Steve Jobs literally said, "When you open the box of an iPhone or iPad, we want that tactile experience to set the tone for how you perceive the product." The package is designed to reinforce the fact that Apple is a premium product, the fact that you made the right choice buying their product, the fact that there's nothing like it on the market, because people do judge a book by its cover. The whole unboxing process is part of the experience. It's part of the product. The way the box feels, the simplicity, the speed at which it opens. It's all about building anticipation, the precise way everything fits together, the things in the box, the subtle branding, even the way the plastic unfurls. And they do this for every one of their products. The unboxing experience is the same. There's literally entire YouTube channels dedicated to unboxing Apple products. None of that matters though if the product you actually build isn't designed well. And one of the things people love about Apple is the design. Everything they manufacture feels like it's made of one piece, of one mold. You don't have random screws and cheap plastic. You've got literal space-grade titanium, aluminum, stainless steel, a sleek minimalistic design, a focus on simplicity, precise engineering, smooth bevels, tactile haptics, perfect uniformity. In a way, it's not just technology, it's art. I mean, some people literally collect Apple products. And the products are meant to last. They're meant to be resistant, to be durable. But one of the reasons they're able to have such a clean design is they're not meant to be meddled with. You can't really fix an Apple product yourself. It's more of a buy once, cry once type of deal. You buy it with the assumption that it will last forever, and it usually does. I've been an Apple user my whole life, and I've never had a product fail. I don't think I've ever even had a blue screen. And I think a lot of people will probably attest to the same thing. I mean, just look at the whole CrowdStrike debacle that happened. I'm sure Apple was absolutely loving that. This is because people tend to overlook one of the things that makes Apple truly unique, and that's the closed ecosystem. The fact that you can't meddle with Apple hardware or Apple software. In the tech world, we call this the walled garden. It's kind of synonymous with every tech company today. But that wasn't always the case. 50 years ago, when Microsoft and IBM were the leaders in computing, it was all about giving customers options, flexibility. Apple was really the first company to take away options from the consumer, intentionally. You see, the biggest difference between Apple and other tech companies is that Apple owns and designs their own hardware and their own software. iOS is built to run on iPhone and iPad. Safari is built to run on Macs. Contrast that with Windows and Android, which run on other devices made by other companies. Microsoft focuses on user choice and flexibility, and Apple focuses on quality, security, and user experience. One of my all-time favorite quotes is from Alan Kay. "People who are really serious about software should make their own hardware." And the point he's making here is that you can't truly build good software or hardware unless you build both. And that's why people love Apple products so much. They just work. And that's because Apple hardware is built specifically to run Apple software, and Apple software is built specifically to run on Apple hardware. And that means they can optimize every little detail for performance. And I think this is one of the reasons they've been able to maintain such a strong brand image. There's also this other element at play though, and that's the fact that Apple products are specifically designed not to integrate with things outside of the Apple ecosystem. But on the flip side of that, Apple products are designed to work seamlessly together. And that's the whole point. You get hooked on iMessage, FaceTime, iCloud, AirDrop, and then all these other peripherals like the AirPods, the Watch, the HomePod, all these things that only exist in the Apple ecosystem. You can't just port everything from your iPhone to Android. So subtly, without you even thinking about it, Apple creates unintentional loyalty to their brand and their products. And before you know it, you're locked into the ecosystem. You've got a Mac, an iPhone, AirPods, a HomePod, a watch. Why do you think Android messages show up as green? It's all to reinforce the fact that iPhone is better. It's a constant reminder that that person is not an iPhone user. And locking you into this ecosystem works. Apple has a 92% retention rate with iPhone users. They control 57% of the smartphone market in the US. Talk about brand loyalty and a monopoly. This all translates to power. The closed ecosystem isn't about just locking you into Apple products and maintaining quality and security standards, though. You see, every app listed on the Apple Store has to be thoroughly vetted by Apple. Google pays Apple upwards of $20 billion every year just to be the default search engine for Safari. And every app that's listed on the App Store has to give Apple a piece of the pie. And Apple, since they own the hardware and the software, gets to collect all the data. Not just your browsing history and your app usage, but your health data and your driving data. They even know where you live and what your face looks like. And all of this goes unnoticed because Apple has carefully crafted this bridge of trust with the consumer. Because only Apple has access to this information, and they don't share it with anyone. The goal isn't to be a tech company. The goal is to be an everything company. And one of the reasons Apple's been so successful is because they don't operate on normal timescales like typical companies do. Apple's goal isn't to make as much money as they can in the short term. They want to build something that lasts indefinitely. It's not about having the best technology. It's about delivering a seamless experience and something more. They're playing a much longer game. And you see this with them investing in new platforms like Vision Pro and Apple TV. Technology itself isn't enough to build a moat. You have to own the platform, because if you own the platform, you make the rules. And funny enough, that's exactly what Facebook is trying to do.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.